Hi, my name is Saeed Alsidawi. I'm one of the cardiologists and echocardiographer at Minneapolis Heart Institute at Abbott Northwestern Hospital. I do interventional echo, and thank you for Dr. Soraja who invited me to give this talk today. My talk is mainly how I saved the proceduralist with imaging, talking mainly about occluder cases. It's really about the collaboration between the imaging and the interventionalist here to have a successful case. So for occluder cases, I chose two cases, one for left atrial appendage occlusion. The second will be for atrial septal occlusion. Neither were straightforward cases and relied heavily on imaging to have good results. So with that, we're going to start. First, we're going to talk about a case of left atrial appendage occlusion. This is a 78-year-old patient who has long-standing atrial fibrillation, who developed severe functional mitral valve regurgitation and underwent TMVR, transcatheter mitral valve replacement, utilizing the Tendyne device a few months prior to this presentation. He had multiple strokes in the past. Because of recurrent GI bleeds and severe nosebleeds, he was referred for an attempt at left atrial appendage occlusion with the Watchman device. Now, going into this procedure, as you can expect, we were expecting multiple challenges here. For those who are not familiar with the Tendyne device, it's not really just a valve in the annulus. There's a big skirt that sits in the left atrium and partially covers the left atrial appendage. So the question is, can we get to the appendage? And if we do, can we have a device that can be well seated down the left atrial appendage? The echocardiogram transthoracic done before the procedure showed good, well-seated TMVR device, normal ejection fraction, and severely enlarged atrium. So just to give you a quick view of what we were going to go through here, this is the view of the left atrial appendage. You see the edge of the Tendyne skirt sitting in the left atrium and covering a part of the left atrial appendage here. And that was one of the challenges here we knew we were going to face. So this is a 3D echo of the device, of the Tendyne device, and along with the appendage. Again, what you see here is this is a surgeon view. We're looking from the left atrium down the left ventricle. This is the valve itself, but as I said, this is the whole device. So there is a large skirt that sits in the atrium. This is anterior, posterior. This is the intra-atrial septum medially and the left atrial appendage laterally. So I just changed the angle here just to show you the view, so you know what to expect during the procedure. As you see, you can see the leaflets here of the device. We're looking from the the intra-atrial septum medially laterally. So this is superior inferior. This is more medial to lateral view. So you can see the device here. You can see the left atrial appendage here, and the question is, can we cross that below the edge of the device? This is just another similar view. Again, we're looking from the atrial septum down to the left atrial appendage. You can see the edge of the device sitting right there. We did some measurements here. We got maximal orifice width by a TE of around 2.5 to 2.6 centimeters. So we decided to proceed with a 30 millimeter Watchman device. As you see here, we were hoping to get below the edge of the device and have the device land right below that edge, anterior. So this is the septal puncture. As you see, we went kind of in the middle in the fossa ovalis in terms of superior, inferior, slightly posterior on the short axis view. Here's our sheath down the left atrium. As you see here, it's going to be the challenge is how we're going to get below the comedal ridge first and then go around the edge of the Tendyne device down in the left atrial appendage. It was very challenging by 2D, so we decided to flip to 3D. As you know, 3D echo doesn't really play that much role in terms of left atrial appendage occlusion procedures, but for this procedure specifically, we thought it would be extremely helpful to guide the catheter down. As you see, what happened is we kept hitting the edge of the device, the Tendyne. So we just stayed on the 3D, and then I was guiding the interventionalist here, trying to go as lateral as we can, trying to go down. And then eventually we were successful. As you see, we were able to get our catheter down the left atrial appendage. This is a biplane view. You can see our sheath down the appendage. Now, started deployment here. The device sat well, actually, right where we want it to be, right below the edge of the skirt of the device, of the tendon. We had a reasonable seal on this view. The question is, are we going to have it all around? Because as you saw, this kind of an irregularly shaped orifice because of the tendon device that was sitting there. So we expected some leak. The question is, how much leak can we leave the device, or if there's a significant leak, can we do something else, like put a plug or a second device, as was reported in some other experiences. And as expected, anteriorly here, close to the edge of the device, we did have some leak. It kind of seals more downward. But nevertheless, that leak was around 3 to 4 millimeters at the maximum dimension we got. So there was some gap that we thought was acceptable, and we decided to just leave it there. So this is a 3D image again of the same angle I showed you before. This is, we still have the sheath. We still have we're not completely released yet. You have the tendine device. You have the watchman down there. As you see, there's a small gap here. This is zoomed in. So this was around, as I said, 3 to 4 millimeters by maximum dimension, and it sealed downward, so we were not too concerned. This is just two more views of this after the release. What you see here on the left, this is the skirt of the device. You see it nicely on this view. We're looking again medially to laterally, and in the distal image here, in the lateral part of the left atrium in the appendage, you can see the watchman device. Small gap here more anteriorly, as you can see. You can see it here as well. Again, around 3 to 4 millimeters by 2D images, so we were happy with the results here. And that's the first case. Second case, this is a fairly complex atrial septal occluder defect that we attempted percutaneous intervention on. This is a patient who has non-complex congenital heart disease. As you see, he had a prior double outlet right ventricle, left TGA, VSD and ASD, kind of a cushion defect with a septum premium, all were closed with patch devices. He underwent surgical intervention when he was 18. Now, he developed later in life atrial fibrillation with severely dilated atriums, which caused some stretching of the atrial patch. Unfortunately, he developed recurrent atrial septal defect because of the stretching and kind of the torn apart patch because of significant stretching on it. That was found on an echo with bubble study with significant left to right shunting. There was a dilation of the right ventricle, so a decision was made to try to attempt to close that defect. The patient, because of his prior complex surgeries and his preference, wanted an attempt at percutaneous closure. In fact, he was tried twice at two different institutions before, and the problem was actually crossing the defect itself. As I'm going to show you, it's a fairly complex defect. By MRI, he had a QPQS of around 1.5 of shunt. Because of dilation of the right ventricle, as I said, and some symptoms of shortness of breath, we decided to go ahead and give it another try. So this is not your usual kind of septum secundum atrial septal defect that you can see on bicaval view and short axis view. I had to go really inferior, close to the annulus of the mitral valve. The defect is right above it, and extremely posterior, and you can still see these kind of patch material inside the defect itself. So very off-axis views, so you can imagine how it's going to be difficult to cross, because you really don't know what you're looking at by 2D. Had to go extremely inferior and posterior. So how do you guide really the wire crossing this defect? So what we decided to do here is to try by 3D images to see if we can guide this. Even by 3D, it was hard to kind of orient yourself till I did this kind of big sector 3D of the whole atriums. So what I did is as you see, this is the mitral annulus, tricuspid annulus, and this is the intraatrial septum. So this left atrium, right atrium, and as you see where the defect is extremely posterior in the atriums, very inferior at the level of the annulus of the mitral and tricuspid valve. And you can see these patch materials kind of in the middle of the defect itself. So this kind of gave a better imagination or better kind of understanding of the anatomy and where to go. After multiple attempts, we actually were able to cross. As you see, we crossed here with a catheter. This is again the same view I showed you, just a little bit of a different angle, atrial septum, left atrium, right atrium, and here you can see the catheter across it. Afterwards, we put the sizing balloon. The problem here was every time we inflated the sizing balloon, there was a significant waste because, again, there are a lot of patch material there. It wasn't just a pure defect. So the decision was made to proceed with cribriform device rather than a Platzer here, 25 millimeter was choice. We had the sheath again across the defect. and then we landed the device. You can see a left atrial and a right atrial disc here. Here is the left atrial disc, right atrial disc. As expected with these devices, you can still have some shunting through the device early on. Usually that tends to improve later on with time. Again, this is the device very well seated across the defects I showed you. Again, this is the same view I showed you at the level of the mitral annulus. Reasonable occlusion, some flow through the device itself. This is just another look at it. Again, you can see the flow through the device. By 2D, how did it look? This is the same view I showed you before. Extremely posterior inferior defect, well sealed with this left atrial disc now. Some drop out from 3D images. To show you both discs, I just again turn the image here. This is atrial septum, left atrium, right atrium. You can see the disc here and the other disc on the other side. Just to imagine this again in 4-chamber view, as you can see the tricuspid and the mitral valve tricuspid valve on the same level in this patient with cushion defect, and you can see how low the device is sitting right above the annulus of these valves. Did not interact with either annulus, and we thought we had a very reasonable results. Now this patient, as I said, had some residual shunting through the device. A month later, he had a repeat echo with bubble study that only showed actually very trivial shunting in terms of left to right shunting by echocardiogram. So very acceptable results. Again, these two images or these two cases show you how the importance of 3D imaging in general, in guiding such complex procedure when things are not straightforward. Thank you for listening. If any questions, suggestions about these talks, please feel free to email me. Here's my email. Thank you very much.